Hello and welcome to Crash CSS, your dedicated preparation space for mastering the CSS syllabus with clarity, confidence, and smart learning strategies. I'm Sidra, your instructor for this module on mass communication. Today, we begin with the most fundamental question of all. What exactly is mass communication? Before diving into theories or historical evolution, it is crucial to build a strong conceptual foundation. To understand mass communication, imagine a message, perhaps breaking news, a government announcement, a sports update, or even entertainment content, being produced at a single source and then reaching millions of people at the same time. This large-scale, society-wide transmission of information is the core idea behind the term. Scholars like McQuail describe mass communication as a communication process operating at the societal level, one that is easily recognized by its structured, institutional nature. In simple words, mass communication refers to the public sharing of information through organized media channels to a vast and diverse audience. Another widely accepted definition states that mass communication is the process of imparting and exchanging information through mass media to large segments of the population. This means that print media, broadcast media, and digital platforms all serve as channels through which organizations, like news agencies, broadcasters, and publishers, send messages to broad, dispersed publics. These messages may appear in the form of news, advertising, entertainment, or public service content. Understanding this basic concept is important because it forms the backbone of all the theories, models, and analytical frameworks you'll encounter ahead. Now that the foundation is laid, let's move toward understanding why mass communication holds such immense importance. Mass communication is one of the most essential pillars of modern social life, performing roles that shape how societies think, behave, and evolve. Its importance becomes clear when we imagine a world without structured information flow. No news to keep the public informed, no analysis to interpret events, no cultural programs to preserve traditions, and no channels for entertainment or public mobilization. Such a society would feel disconnected, uninformed, and directionless. This is why scholars argue that the survival, stability, and progress of communities depend heavily on the presence of active, free, and reliable mass communication systems. The media informs citizens about ongoing events, keeping them aware of political developments, international affairs, economic conditions, and emergencies. They also interpret information by providing expert commentary, editorial opinions, and analytical breakdowns that help people make sense of complex issues. Mass communication serves an educational purpose as well, distributing knowledge through documentaries, public awareness campaigns, and cultural content that reinforces shared values and identity. It mobilizes public sentiment during crises, guiding people toward collective action, whether it is disaster relief, public health campaigns, or national initiatives. Entertainment also forms a vital part of media's role, offering relaxation, emotional engagement, and shared experiences that bring communities together. Scholars like McQuail emphasize that media shape public opinion, influence decision-making, and hold significant power in democratic societies. A well-informed citizenry remains the foundation of democracy, and mass communication plays an irreplaceable role in ensuring that citizens receive timely and accurate information. Understanding mass communication requires placing it in the broader context of the different types of communication that humans use to share ideas and meaning. The most basic form is intrapersonal communication, which takes place within a person's own mind. It includes self-reflection, internal dialogue, and the mental processing of thoughts. This internal communication is the foundation of all external communication, because every message begins as an internal idea. The next type is interpersonal communication, which occurs between two people who influence each other's thoughts, emotions, and actions. It is direct, personal, and immediate, often enriched through tone, facial expressions, and body language. Interpersonal exchanges may happen in daily conversations, professional discussions, or emotionally meaningful interactions. Group communication extends this interaction to 3 or more individuals working toward a shared purpose. Discussions in classrooms, committee meetings, organizational teams, and social groups are all forms of group communication, where ideas are exchanged, debated, and refined collectively. Feedback is active and quick, and every participant contributes to the creation of meaning. Finally, mass communication stands apart from these other types due to its scale, structure, and reliance on technology. In mass communication, the sender is usually an institution or organization, while the audience is large, anonymous, and widely dispersed. Messages flow through mediated channels such as television, radio, newspapers, or digital platforms. Unlike interpersonal or group settings, feedback is limited or delayed. This unique structure makes mass communication a powerful tool for shaping public knowledge, values, and behavior. Every act of communication, whether personal or mass-mediated, follows a carefully structured process. It begins with a source who holds an idea or thought that needs to be expressed. The source then engages in encoding, translating that idea into words, symbols, or visuals that can be understood by others. Once encoded, this message travels through a channel. A channel may be a physical pathway, such as sound waves, or a mediated route such as a newspaper, a television broadcast, or a digital platform. At the receiving end is the receiver, who decodes the message by interpreting its meaning. For example, when a journalist publishes a news article, the journalist is the source. The written report is the encoded message. The newspaper or website acts as the channel, and the reader becomes the receiver who decodes the information. However, communication is rarely without obstacles. Noise can interfere at any stage, distorting the message and affecting understanding. Noise may be physical, like static on a radio, psychological, such as preconceived notions, or semantic, like unfamiliar language. These disturbances make communication less effective and sometimes entirely misunderstood. Feedback forms the final component of the process. In interpersonal communication, feedback is immediate and helps participants adjust their responses. In mass communication, feedback is slower and often indirect, arriving through audience reactions, ratings, or public responses. Because communication can be complex, scholars developed models to illustrate how messages move from sender to receiver and how communication can break down or improve. In 1948, Claude Shannon and Warren Weaver introduced one of the most influential models in communication theory. Originally designed to solve problems in telephone and telegraph systems, their model eventually became foundational for understanding all types of communication. The Shannon-Weaver model presents communication as a linear movement of information through 5 stages. It begins with a source that formulates a message. The message is then sent to a transmitter, which encodes the information into signals suitable for the channel. The channel carries the signal to a receiver, which decodes it, and finally the message reaches the destination. A telephone call illustrates this process well. The caller is the source, the telephone acts as the transmitter, the voice signal travels through the phone line as the channel, the listener's device decodes the signal, and the listener becomes the destination. Shannon and Weaver also introduced the concept of noise, which refers to anything that disrupts or distorts the signal. Noise may include technical faults, environmental disturbances, or any interference affecting clarity. They identified 3 kinds of communication problems: technical problems related to accurate signal transmission, semantic problems concerning interpretation of meaning, and effectiveness problems involving whether the message achieves its intended purpose. Although the model was created for engineering, its clarity made it essential for communication studies. However, it remains a strictly one-way model and does not account for feedback or context, which limits its application to real-world communication. Harold Lasswell, a renowned political scientist, introduced another significant communication model in 1948, one that has remained central to media studies ever since. Lasswell's model simplifies communication into a series of guiding questions. Who says what? In which channel to whom with what effect? These 5 components represent the essential elements of any communication act. The who refers to the communicator or the sender responsible for crafting the message. Says what identifies the content of the message, while in which channel points to the medium through which the message is delivered, whether it is a newspaper, radio broadcast, television program, or digital platform. The next part, to whom, refers to the audience receiving the message, and with what effect examines the outcome or impact the message produces in that audience. Lasswell originally applied this framework to study propaganda and political communication, particularly how media influence public attitudes and behavior. The model provides a structured way to analyze communication by urging us to look at each component separately and understand how they interact. One of the model's major strengths is its simplicity and its ability to guide analysis of mass media content. However, it is also linear and does not explicitly include feedback, which means it views communication as a one-way process. Despite this limitation, Lasswell's approach continues to be widely taught because it offers a clear method for evaluating how messages are produced, transmitted, and received, and what effects they create. David Berlo expanded the study of communication in 1960 with his SMCR model, an approach that added depth to the understanding of how messages travel and how meaning is constructed. SMCR stands for source, message, channel, and receiver. Although the model remains linear, Berlo introduced detailed components within each stage. He argued that communication effectiveness depends heavily on the characteristics of both the source and the receiver. These characteristics include communication skills, attitudes, knowledge levels, and social or cultural backgrounds. When the source and receiver share similar experiences or backgrounds, communication becomes clearer and more effective. Berlo also focused on the internal components of the message itself, such as its content, structure, and the treatment or manner in which it is presented. The channel, according to Berlo, represents the sensory pathways through which the message is perceived, including sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. One of the strengths of Berlo's model is its acknowledgement of human factors in communication. It highlights how mismatched vocabulary, differing attitudes, or unequal levels of knowledge can lead to misunderstandings. However, like earlier models, it does not incorporate feedback or account for noise explicitly, which keeps it within the framework of one-way communication. Yet its attention to psychological and cultural elements makes it a valuable tool for understanding how people interpret messages differently based on their backgrounds. 1954. Wilbur Schramm revolutionized the study of communication by shifting the focus from one-way transmission to interaction. His interactive model views communication as a two-way, circular process in which participants continuously exchange roles as sender and receiver. According to Schramm, communication begins when one person encodes a message and sends it to another, who then decodes it. Immediately afterward, the receiver formulates feedback, which becomes a new message for the original sender. This back-and-forth exchange creates an ongoing cycle of interaction. A central concept in Schramm's model is the field of experience. This refers to the shared background, knowledge, culture, and experiences of communicators. Schramm believed that the more overlap there is between the fields of experience of two people, the more successful their communication will be. When their backgrounds are vastly different, misunderstandings are more likely to occur. Schramm also emphasized the importance of feedback. In interpersonal communication, feedback is immediate and allows participants to adjust their words and behavior instantly. However, in mass communication, feedback is often weaker, slower, and indirect, because audiences may not respond immediately to broadcasts or print content. Despite this limitation, Schramm's model was groundbreaking because it recognized communication as an active, interactive process rather than a simple transfer of information. By 1970, communication scholars began to view communication as even more complex and dynamic than earlier interactive models suggested. Dean Barnlund introduced one of the earliest transactional models, arguing that communication is a simultaneous, ongoing process in which people are both senders and receivers at the same time. In this model, communication is not about sending messages back and forth in turns. Instead, it is about continuously constructing and interpreting meaning through verbal and nonverbal cues. Barnlund explained that in real-life conversations, people speak, listen, gesture, and observe all at once. Meaning is created through this simultaneous interaction, influenced by context, personal experiences, emotional states, and social environments. Nonverbal signals such as facial expressions, tone of voice, posture, and gestures carry significant weight in shaping interpretation. Because communication unfolds in real time, every moment affects the next, and there is no clear beginning or ending to the process. This transactional view has become increasingly relevant in today's digital age, where people interact instantly through comments, reactions, live messages, and social media engagement. Communication is rarely one-directional anymore. Audiences participate actively, reinterpret content, and influence the overall communication environment. Barnlund's perspective highlights that communication is not simply about delivering information, but about co-creating meaning continuously within a social context. Communication models serve an important purpose in helping students and scholars understand complex processes by presenting them in simplified visual forms. They explain how communication works, identify the essential elements involved, and reveal where misunderstandings or disruptions may occur. Models also allow predictions about how certain factors, such as noise or limited feedback, can affect the outcome of communication. In educational settings, these models act as valuable tools for explaining ideas clearly and helping learners visualize the flow of messages. However, each model has its strengths and limitations. Linear models like those developed by Shannon, Lasswell, and Berlo have been foundational in the field because they identify key components and clarify the basic structure of message transmission. Yet they are often criticized for oversimplifying communication, especially in contexts where interaction and feedback play crucial roles. Shannon Weaver's model assumes that messages remain intact as they move through a channel, but critics argue that encoding and decoding can alter meaning. Lasswell's model leaves out feedback entirely, and Berlo's framework, although detailed, does not incorporate noise or response. In modern digital communication, where interaction is frequent and immediate, these limitations become even more apparent. Audiences respond quickly, shape messages, and influence content creation. Despite these shortcomings, the older models remain valuable because they provide the conceptual vocabulary, such as sender, receiver, message, channel, encoding, and decoding, on which newer, more dynamic theories are built. Together, all these models trace the evolution of communication understanding, from simple linear transmission to complex interactive meaning-making. Thank you so much for watching this lesson and being a part of Crash CSS. Your support means everything to us, and it motivates our team to keep creating high-quality, exam-focused content to guide you through your CSS journey. If you found this session helpful, please subscribe to the channel, press the bell icon, and share our videos with other aspirants. It helps our platform grow and continue producing valuable lessons for all of you. Take care, keep studying smart, and I'll see you in the next lesson.